Today we are going to have another session of unbelievable things. Huh? Do you really believe that Arabs won't be able to understand such things as happening, really happening?
These are very strange things, Hudhoor.
Really?
Yes.
There's more strange things to come. They should know fully what Pakistan is. What Islamic country, they don't know anything else about it. Pakistan, with the mullahs, is the most, what should I say, my own country, you know. Have you heard that Arabic verse? قومي هم قتلوا أماماخي فإن رميتموهم يصيبني سهمي. See? That is the problem.
قومي قتلوا
قومي هم قتلوا. If one word is missing, but this will make the sense all right.
someone أخي.
قومي هم قتلوا أمامة.
أمامة أخي.
أمامة أخي, yes. فإن رميتموهم فإن رميتهم
أصابني سهمي.
يصيبني
سهمي.
رميتهم. Right? So we were, and ये बयान हम पढ़ रहे थे ना, पूरे खत्म नहीं हुए थे. Now all these sudden this outburst against me by naming me in particular is what took place after my departure from Pakistan, and they somehow frantically wanted me back. So this is an organized propaganda with the connivance of government, obviously. They wanted them to make a noise, and so that they could quote these papers and your demands to the government, or to the British government, and say, look here, what can we do? Our people are demanding this, and it's a matter of justice only that. And no more than that. Imroz, on 3/5/84, Manzoor Chinoti again issued a statement that the moment the investigation, the area of investigation regarding the so-called murder of Aslam Qureshi was widened, Mirza Tahir Ahmad fled from the country. So he should be brought back with the help of Interpol. And then in Lolak, one well-known Maulvi wrote, it is Mirza Tahir Ahmad who is the real murderer of Aslam Qureshi. While nobody has yet established that a murder has taken place. You know, all this noise made people really believe. And riots were, in fact, right against Ahmadis, and sometimes their properties were burned, their shops were looted, they were manhandled and beaten up, because the mullahs kept telling them that Aslam Qureshi, our great Maulana, was abducted and then murdered by Mirza Tahir Ahmad and some other Ahmadis. And now, a demand was made that Mirza Tahir Ahmad should be declared as absconder, and as such all his property should be confiscated, whatever he has left in Pakistan. And then comes the final, sentimental touch. A letter addressed to General Ziaul Haq by his son, the son of the Maulana, which was given wide publicity. It said, मेरे वालिद असलम कुरैशी के अगवा के केस में मिर्ज़ा ताहिर अहमद उसमें मुलव्वस दूसरे कादियानों को गिरफ्तार करके शामिल तफ्तीश किया जाए. मिर्ज़ा ताहिर अहमद और उसमें मुलव्वस दूसरे कादियानियों को गिरफ्तार करके शामिल तफ्तीश किया जाए. अगर उनसे मेरे वालिद का कुछ पता न चले, मुझे गोली मार दी जाए. That he said to the president my request to you is, my earnest request is, that the investigation of the disappearance of my father should be widened, and Mirza Tahir Ahmad must be implicated in that, along with other Ahmadis. If he is not discovered from them, I should be shot dead. These are the Maulvis and their, those who are raised by them under their care. This is their moral, shall we say, immoral state. They don't know what truth is. They indulge in the most blatant lies and allegations, wild allegations against somebody, and claim, to strengthen their claim, they say, shoot us if we are wrong. Somebody should do something about them. They should be shot dead. Is there any sense of justice left in Pakistan? See? And now, I come to the second phase. When Aslam Qureshi suddenly reappears. ये हो चुका है? In the beginning, it was said Aslam Qureshi returned of his own accord after 5 years. Wherever in the world he was, where news was not reaching him that so many Ahmadis are beaten up and dragged in the streets and tortured in the Qila, it's called, in the Lahore Castle and some other places. And special torture teams were appointed. And some of those who escaped ultimately, they wrote to me, all the details were so horrible to note, that because of these mullahs, they were mercilessly tortured by trained police who excel in this art of torturing, like inquisitioners of Spain. And then it said that he came of his own accord. And here is an interview of Aslam Qureshi, the so-called Maulana, which is being taken by the IG of police.
This one beside him is the chief police?
IG of police is Inspector General of the police. The supreme boss of the entire Punjab police. It's a very big post. Very important post indeed. This is Inspector Police interviewing him directly. You see? Then there's all detail, I don't want to go into it. The interview he gave was so rotten and rubbish that there was no explanation why he was hiding himself from. He said in Pakistan for a while, for about 10 months. He went from province to province. Of course he lived with some people, some ulama knew, and he sought shelter, but everywhere in that particular period, Ahmadis were being tortured throughout Pakistan, and wild allegations were raised and leveled against me and others. So this is the standard of their honesty.
That means they are participated?
All, they knew. Cooked up, conspiracy and plot. Maulana Aslam Qureshi, after remaining incognito, he returned of his own accord. This is one. These are the Maulvi newspapers and their instruments. They want to show that he was not arrested by police or brought back forcibly. He decided one day that, all right, let me go back to the country. One newspaper says he suddenly appears from nowhere. It says after 5.5 years, the Maulana who had disappeared suddenly appeared before the police in a dramatic style. And the statement why he ran away in the first place, why he was hiding. You know the statement? He said, I can where the name of the Holy Prophet is insulted.
That means we kidnapped him.
He said, I cannot remain, live in a country where the holy name of Hadhrat Muhammad Rasulullah is dishonored.
But he came back.
So that is why for 10 months he remained in hiding here and there. But imagine the quality of this mind as well. Either they're extremely stupid people, absolute dunces, or they're shamelessly clever and cunning. And they build these stories as if any sane man could accept this. If this is the thing, why didn't you announce that I'm leaving this country? Why did you remain in hiding for 10 months, according to your own story, within Pakistan? And how could you tolerate eating and drinking and breathing in the country where you thought the name of Hazrat Muhammad was, insulted? And again, the question was, why did he return to that country now, after all? What difference had been made by that time? And then the mullahs started a campaign of trying to have sympathy of the people, win sympathy of the people, by publishing stories like Maulana Aslam Quraishi Shadeed Zakhmi hai. He's extremely, very, very severely wounded, and there are holes in his heels, like ulcerative holes. So the little word used in Urdu is there are holes in his heels. As if I had beaten holes, by driving nails in. And then Khatm Nubuwwat, these are the honest people who were funded by many an Arab state. They said that police is extracting statements from Maulana Sahib under torture. And all that is attributed to him is wrong. It's the police torture which is compelling him to make these statements. Because with him, the entire name of the Khatm movement had been blemished and destroyed. So they wanted to retrieve some, to salvage some wreckage, as they say. Now, very, very interesting news. This is something real, but mixed with that stupid attitude of trying to cover things. He said in Iran, in Pakistani embassy, one Pakistani delegate, political appointment, he doesn't say he was the ambassador, but someone in the staff of the ambassador recognized Aslam Qureshi and fraudulently took him back to the country. He was fraudulent, who was taking back the man who was expounding himself and playing such fraud. According to the mullahs, poor man, he was fraudulently taken back.
There's contradiction.
Huh? Of course,
They contradict with each other.
in lies, there is no consistency. Now Aslam Qureshi, again, after a while, the statement he issues is, on the July 31st, when he is released from that protective custody of police, no punishment is given, not at all. He says, the fact is, now he's free beyond, is without compulsion. It was the Ahmadis who had abducted me and constantly tortured me. Before he says he ran away and police traced all his route, where he stayed, It was all confirmed that he stayed for a while with that mullah and that mullah and that mullah. And afterwards, he says, Ahmadi had abducted. In another case, even Mirza, that is Ahmadi women took vehement part in torturing me. You see, these are the mullahs so highly respected in some Arab countries, you know. When they go to them, they freely give them money and this and that. At their, expense, they come to London and, indulge in such objectionable conduct against Ahmadis and so this is Maulana Aslam Qureshi. And the rest of the Maulana, they're all one, exactly the same people, same thing. Now again, he comes out with a statement published on the 1st of August 1988. Corroborating his July statement, he says, it were the Qadianis who had abducted me, and it were Qadiani women who subjected me to extreme torture. Where, how, who they were, why didn't he report the matter? Why did he run away and kept quiet about it for 5 years? Imagine, And all these statements were fully supported by the mullahs. In fact, after he was released from protective custody by the police, and all the statements were recorded and verified, then the mullahs took over, and this is their Islam. They have factories of manufacturing lies, and nobody cares. Nobody ever takes notice of what the mullahs are, what sort of religious leaders they are. No. They alleged repeatedly that the government had tortured him to extract lies from him. Now the question is why? In whose favor? It was the government who had, legislated such stringent laws against Ahmadiyas and who were the prosecutors of Ahmadiyyat, while the mullahs were the persecutors of Ahmadis. They did it for what purpose? And extracted what lies? There was full record in Iran that he appeared after a year or so in Iran and was employed in their army, and after a while he was discharged because of his conduct, and he married a half-witted woman who nobody else could marry her, and because it was for the sake of getting some excuse to remain in Iran. All this was official record, and according to the mullahs, the government had tortured him to extract false testimony. So the central minister had to make this statement, public statement, that is absolutely wrong. Maulana Aslam Qureshi was never tortured by any police agency. Those who were, they were Ahmadis, and nobody moved a finger against that torture. Oh, what a wonderful. In Imroz, one of the very well-known papers, a statement is published by Maulana Ziaul Qasimi. He is a man of status among the mullahs, which is second to none in their own sect. Ahl-Sunnah wal Jamaat, the largest sect of Muslims in Pakistan. Well, he would be second to some, but he is a very well-known figure, of course. He says, I tell you the truth. Don't take notice of what you read in the newspapers. The truth is that it was the Mirzais or the Qadianis or Ahmadis who had abducted this Mullah Sahib and had kept him for 5 years under solitary confinement, and they continued to torture this man. And if you see his picture, he's oversized mullah, you know. In which confinement he was kept? How could he appear in Iran in that confinement? Or was Iran a collaborator with Ahmadis in this regard? Such absurdities, such blatant lies. And the whole country still respects them as Maulana, the custodians of Islam, imagine. For 5 years continuously, poor Maulana Sahib. What Maulana? The one who stabbed Imam Ahmad and became Maulana only by the virtue of that murderous act. And he says somewhere he was kept unfortunately in solitary, so he seems to have lost his balance. And this Maulana knew it. And why didn't he report to the police? Why didn't he name anybody? Why didn't he tell which place he was kept in? Raids should have followed, and hue and cry could be raised, that the police could bring under custody many people. But this was done after 4 years after I had left the country. This story was revealed. Now, हो गया खत्म? अच्छा, ये भी है होने वाला? Don't think it's enough is enough, huh? Leave him alone now, huh? ये बड़ी खुश आइंद बात है. Imagine this editorial. Huh? What a news with such bright prospects for the future. That Maulana was dramatically discovered. What bright prospects. But this is ये बड़ी खुशाइंद बात है, you know. It's a good omen for the future of the country. That Hadhrat Maulana Sahib, who had disappeared, has suddenly reappeared. Although the statement which he gave before the police looks more like a legend and a mythical story, yet at least this can be said, that after the reappearance of the Maulana, this long agitation and persecution of Ahmadis of 5 years would come to an end. This was the damage done to Ahmadis and their name and everybody. Then it says, अब वो खुद ही वापस आ गए हैं, इसलिए उनकी बरामदगी का क्रेडिट उन्हीं को जाता है. Again, an absolute blatant lie. Not because he has returned himself, so the credit goes to him. One newspaper from Rawalpindi, it was outspoken. It's just a blatant crime and absolutely unforgivable for a man to be called a Maulana, and with all the Maulanas in conspiracy with him, to see for 5 years innocent people being robbed, being attacked, houses burned, the shops looted, being tortured, being dragged in the street, for the so-called crime of abduction and murder of a Maulana who was all the time alive, and these Maulanas knew it. The government should take very stringent measures against these people so that in future nobody dare do this. This is Roznama Haidar of Rawalpindi, which was the only strong, bold critique of the whole affair. Now this is a non-Ahmadi writer writing in a paper, Tahir, Sayyid Khaisar Shirazi. It is his verdict that Maulana suddenly flooded the country with edicts and call for revenge. And as a result, there was a constant session, a procession of public protests in which Ahmadi houses were demolished, they were put to fire, they were put ablaze, and as if mountains of transgression was brought heavily down upon the heads of the Ahmadis. This is exactly what was happening. He said because of this, many an Ahmadi house, place of worship, was demolished or forcibly captured. Kalima Taiba, wherever it was written, Kalima Shahada, it was erased from the face of the mosque or the houses, and Ahmadis were practically tortured. And yet these mullahs, all of them were watching all this, and this Maulana Sahib was sitting in Iran, and according to them he couldn't make a statement because he was kept in solitary custody by Ahmadis, where they only found some women bold enough and cruel enough to torture him. Can you believe it, really? Can such a thing happen in any Arab country? Honestly tell me. No? Sure?
Never.
Why do they believe in the mullahs then anymore? They should be rejected. Even entry should be withheld. They should not be permitted. The entry should be denied them. Such filthy people in the name of religion, they call themselves religious leaders related to Hadhrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and this is their character and conduct. Arab states, why Arab states are honored?
Maybe they do not know the truth.
Yeah, not fact.
But they should know. They read the. Don't they read the? They receive the reports, intelligence reports from Pakistan. I can't believe it. They know it. The public doesn't know. There you are right.
No.
The public doesn't know, but the governments know. In the final analysis, that it should be remembered that this so-called Maulana is no Maulana whatsoever. He was an ordinary employee of Islamabad CDA. CDA is Capital Development Authority. And the only knowledge to his credit is knowledge that he attempted to murder Imam Ahmad. And after that, suddenly, from Aslam Qureshi, he was transformed into Maulana Aslam Qureshi. That's all the religious knowledge to his credit and no more. These are published material.
He is a non-Ahmadi writer.
Of course. The paper is non-Ahmadi. Hadhrat. This Sayyid Khaisar Shirazi. Aina. He writes under the title Aina, mirror, to show you the faces you have. This is his Aina. And before the police, his statement, which was televised, was that, look here, I'm live enough and kicking. I went on of my own accord to participate in Iranian jihad against Baghdad, against Iraq. A Sunni Muslim participating in jihad against the Sunni state on behalf of the Shiites. Have you ever seen such a thing with so total such madness? No grain of common sense and logic and understanding of wisdom is found in the whole episode of the mullahs supporting him first, him, smuggling him out, and then receiving him with all these statements and things. Then he makes a categorical statement. What I am writing is merely based on my sense of justice. Let me make it clear that I have nothing to do with Qadiani Maslik. I am a Sayyid who is from the progeny of Hadhrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. But I have at least some conscience in me which is still alive, which compels me to accept to confess all this. What our people are doing to a helpless sect, minority sect, and this is what the whole nation has accepted as valid. But it's strong criticism he has written. He said, in fact, this matter should not be left at that. A public inquiry should be made, and all those who are involved in this crime and who abetted this crime should be very severely punished, so that in future nobody can dare such a thing. Now this Maulana Sahib, on the 9th of March 1989, this madman was released without any punishment. And he again attempted to murder an Ahmadi lawyer of Sialkot by the name of Khaja Sarfiraz Ahmad Sahib. Very capable man, very popular among his brotherhood of lawyers and advocates. So much so that a call was made for total strike, and the lawyers led a procession. The leader of the lawyers there, the president of whatever association it is, he led a procession of lawyers protesting in the streets against this most beastly attempt to murder one of the noblest of their brotherhood. As Khaja, he's a very capable man. He, in fact, it is who takes care of so many Ahmadi cases which are still pending, hundreds of them in fact. Some under 295 A, C, some under this, sometimes some under that. In fact, the number of the cases pending against Ahmadis is many thousand now. And Ahmadi lawyers have been this period that they have been pursuing those cases and defending the cause of these innocent people without getting any penny, a single penny from Jamaat Ahmadiyya. So this is how we are maintaining this, Otherwise, maybe millions upon millions of rupees would be spent only for defending the cause, and then we would not be able to trust anyway the non-Ahmadi lawyers, who, some of them of course are very noble and trustworthy. We employ them occasionally, but they belong to the very highest circle and tier of lawyers. In ordinary courts, it's very difficult to depend on anybody, particularly when the case is of religious nature and sectarian nature. It's very difficult to trust anyone. So it is Khaja Sahib who has been running far and wide at his own expense, defending the cause of Ahmadis, sometimes in Rawalpindi, sometimes in Chennai, sometimes risking his life, going through the rush of the mullahs, protesting and shouting outside the courts. So this is why he was targeted.
Who tried to murder him?
What?
Is this Qureshi?
This Qureshi is him.
MashaAllah.
And he stabbed him from behind repeatedly until the knife got twisted. But it's fortunately for us, it could not penetrate through the ribs into the heart. It stuck against the rib and it got twisted. And this was all published in the newspapers. Musawat, Roznama Imroz. and the reaction of the lawyer community against this heinous attempted murder.
Was he punished
No,
for this crime?
I don't know. He's still at large, isn't he? What happened was, in protest against his arrest, he went into hunger strike in the in the jail. Here you are. Jang Lahore, 7 December. Hadhrat Aslam Qureshi Sahib Maulana ne.
Hadhrat?
Of course, he was a big Hadhrat, of course, a very big Hadhrat. He has started hunger strike against his imprisonment or the custody. He was not imprisoned, he was still in custody, for a while, for the crime of attempting to murder another leading Ahmadi. This is Pakistan. Now tell me, I don't ask you the repeated question of can it happen in an Arab country? Can it happen in any country of the world? Any other? Nowhere.
Then there is a question, Hudhoor. Why it happened only in Pakistan?
Because they have given in to the mullahs completely.
The political leaders.
الغراب هذا قوم سيهديهم طريق الهالكين. That is the answer. And he repeatedly did it, not only once. Repeatedly did it until he turned and held the khanjar, with the sharp, at the sharp edge, and his hand was also mutilated and very, very badly injured. But he was a brave man. He kept it. Afterward, when he saw no way, then he ran away and left this twisted dagger in the hand of the lawyer. إذا كان الغراب هذا قوم سيهديهم طريق الهالكين. So it's from this very serious note. Let's turn to some interesting things, some other interesting things. He's admitted while appearing before the public when no mullah was permitted to meet him. Only that is the period when he told less lies than before. He told lies, all right, but they were less, smaller lies. And occasionally a glimpse of truth was also seen in those statements. So he said, while I was hiding in Balochistan, I used to go to mosque incognito. And there, it was every week, every Friday, it was announced that let us pray for the return, safe return of Maulana Aslam Qureshi. I said, I also participated in that prayer. So it was the prayer of this holy man resulted in his return.
يحكي أمير المؤمنين
Before
لطيفة.
running away, he was praying for a safe return. So look at how holy he was. His prayer was ultimately accepted by Allah. So he ran away and then returned.
Yes, Hudhoor, because with his return, everything was discovered. And Alhamdulillah.
It was not his dua, it was something else
Yes.
which did it. I'll come to that later.
Yes, inshallah, Hudhoor.
The fact, now another very interesting thing is, why did he not use his passport? This is the question. He saw to it that he decamps with his passport, and the statement of his family, etc., was that he took his passport when he left. In fact, he had used his passport, but the police and others did not want to show it to the public because it must have an entry in some Arab countries first. According to the story of the other officer, he was seen in Saudi according to him. So he must have gone first. This whole story of his remaining in Pakistan and praying for his return, in my opinion, is totally false. It's a cover-up. So that ultimately he is shown to have smuggled directly into Iran. While the fact is that he had his passport with him, and that passport had been used for entry into some Arab countries. And he had remained there, and from there he got smuggled into Iran, not from Pakistan. The version of the high police official, which I quoted before, must be taken to be right, He has no reason why to concoct his story uselessly, aimlessly. He was 100% certain. He said, I know if, he said that I had requested my government, permit me to go and retrieve him from Saudi and I'll do that. But he was changed. The investigation was taken away from him. That is the reason why this passport doesn't come into picture at all anymore. Now I tell you the other important phase of the whole episode, my departure from the country, why it took place, did I run away from justice or whatever happened. You know, when I suspected that something is cooking against Ahmadiyya between the Mullah and the then dictator of Pakistan, Ziaul Haq, instead of running away, I went straight to Islamabad and camped there for 7 days until the deputy commissioner of Islamabad, one of the deputy commissioners, I think it's divided into 2-3 areas, where I was residing, he sent me a very urgent message. It happened the day after I received the message through an SP from Ziaul Haq himself. You rest assured and sleep in peace, nothing would happen, no problem. This deputy commissioner said, my earnest advice to you is, for God's sake, return immediately to Rabwa, or it will be too late. Things will happen, a murder could be planned immediately, even there. So I inquired, why does he advise me? The person who carried the message said, he is not going to tell you anything, but he said, have trust in me. For God's sake, leave this place immediately. So I consulted Ahmadi. I said that maybe he has got some information and it's better to abide by his advice. After all, he seems to be a good reputation of being a kind, thorough human being. So we took advice and I left. And 2 days after my departure, or 3 days after my departure, this was announced. This Anti-Ahmadiyya ordinance was publicly announced. So he knew it and he knew something was going to happen, and he wanted me to be back in Rabwa at that time, to be in command of all the situation and also to escape any possible danger which may ensue from this. So all right, I was in Rabwa when on the 26th of April this announcement was made that Ahmadis have been deprived of all fundamental human rights, of calling themselves what they believe in, of behaving like a Muslim, of calling their mosques places of worship, of masjid, and to call azan and this and that. So after this has been translated, I think it's only 1 minute left. So we have it still tomorrow for us.
Yes.
Together. Huh?
Yes,
inshallah. So you better translate this tomorrow. And now it's a very interesting phase of the episode which begins from here on to the present time. Okay?
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.